Hi everybody, this is Oksana, and today I'm going to show you how to make this little pendant here. Kind of looks like a bottle. I don't know why. It just makes me think of with a decorative top or something. So this could be done with a round little stone like I did here. You can use an oval or a teardrop with the point down. And if you want to see how I made this pendant, just keep watching. So the wire I'm using is 21 gauge square copper, and I buy it on riogrande.com website. And the reason that I'm using 21 gauge is because my stone is small and I cut myself 3 pieces. They're probably a little long because I actually just switched my stone to an even smaller stone that I had before, but they're about 10 inches. And I'll show you my stone here in a second. So I decided to use a little round stone because it's been a while since I've used a round one, but you can make this with other shapes as well. So it is about 15 millimeters, and then if you're doing inches, it's a little more than ½ an inch. It's just a really small little round peach moonstone that is carved with like this little flower. And so if your stone is a oval, you can use it in the same way, and if it's a teardrop, you would just position the teardrop point down. And this is a half round wire that I'm using to make the connection. It's from the same place and it's 22 gauge. So I like to leave it on the spool, and I find the middle of my 3 wires here, and because they're square, they can kind of lay one on top of the other there. And I'm just gonna grab my half round wire and the flat side down. I'm gonna wrap around all 3 of these base wires. And you don't need to do this for very long. It's basically just to connect these together. And so if you're wrapping the tail end, you would do around like I just did. But if you just have a tiny little tail end and you're wrapping the part that's connected to the spool of your wire, you would guide it with your hand and you would turn. So just turn it as you guide. You can't just go like this around and around because it'll get twisted since it's still connected to the spool. So once you have yourself a few wraps there, that's going to hold the wires together nicely. You can trim off the wire ends and just make sure that when you trim them, both of the wire ends are on the same side. There we go. So when you're squishing them down with your pliers, I grab my Zuron pliers here. These are the tweezer nose pliers. I have all my tools linked in the information box below the video. So then I'm pressing down on this whole wrap, and here's both of my wire ends. So the other side is clean. This is the side that will be kind of exposed to the world, but the side with the wire ends is going to be touching the stone, so you won't see it. So your stone, if you want to bend it a little bit, your stone's going to sit in here. And then you just want to lay this down on like a table or a flat surface. That's the easiest usually. And bend your frame just like this around your stone. I'm making sure that it's centered, that this little wrap on the bottom here is centered. And as you bring them together here at the top, just want to put a little bend in the wire. So if you're doing this on a table, you can make this portion kind of hang off the table so you can get in there and put the bends in them and do this. So it's totally okay if this isn't perfectly centered, you can fix it. I know it can be kind of tricky to get it perfect. So you can just get in there, and usually it works best if I do just push one little wrap at a time to try and get it centered. And then another thing you can do, if it's just a hair off center, you can remove a wrap. You can just unwrap it, and then you can trim it off, and then press that little end down in there if you need just like a tiniest bit, because we have a lot, so removing just one isn't going to make a big difference. So now we're going to take our half round wire again. We're going to line up all of these wires, so there's kind of 3 and 3 on the other side, and we're going to wrap our half round wire around the 6 wires there. And then after you wrap it a few times, just kind of push it down like this, and then we're going to grab this little tail end and we're going to pull it through the center from the back to the front. Just pull on it. And then go ahead and just trim that off. And now what you want to do is you want to separate your wires. So you have the 2 frontmost wires that you can just bend forward like this. And then if you go to the back and you take the 2 backmost wires and you bend them back, then you're just left with the middle wires here, and those are the wires that we're going to use for our bail. So continuing with this half round wire, we're just going to wrap it around and around until this is tall enough to be our bail, and this varies a little bit depending on if you want a really tall bail because you have maybe a really thick necklace that you want to hang this pendant on, or maybe you just want a tiny little bail. It's up to you, but I'm just gonna keep going like this for a little bit. So I'm guiding it because it's connected to the spool. I'm guiding it and I'm just twisting the piece, and that's what makes it wrap around. So once you're satisfied with how long your bail is, what you want to do, so this was the front, remember we pushed the little wire out here and we trimmed it. The back looks like this because it's got this extra little wrap. So if you're holding it with the back facing you, that's where you want your little wire end to be for your bail. So just trim that off and press down that little wire end, and then just press down the whole thing. So what you want to do now is, these are my front wires. This is the front of my pendant and this is the back. So the back 2 wires, we're basically just going to get rid of them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab them with my pliers. I'm going to put a bend this way, kind of upwards. Let me zoom in a little bit. And then as I'm holding it like that, I'm going to bring them down like that, and that allows the wires to get pushed right close against the rest of the piece. So when you trim them off, it's almost like they're not even there. Just going to press down on the little ends there. So that's how I got rid of the excess wires. Because if you were to bend them down just normally like this, see how it forms a gap, and it's pretty hard to close that gap. So with the front wires, we are going to do that though, because we're not getting rid of the front wires. we want them to be folded down. So I try to make a bend with my pliers, but the problem is if you do too much with your pliers, you'll scratch them up. So what you want to do is you want to cover them with like a cloth or something, and then press through the cloth like a little bit at a time, because it's difficult to see what you're doing. So you're almost like guessing there what's happening, and then just keep lifting up that cloth and kind of checking how it's going. It might push them to the side like it just did for me there. So then you just grab them and center them again. And it did push the back wires as well. I'll fix those in a minute. So as you can see, we've got them really close now. So now I'm going to fix those back wires that got pushed to the side. Just going to fix those up. Just kind of press down on the ends. I'm going to look at these front wires to make sure that they're kind of centered and nice and not crooked there. There we go. All right. So if you just do that straight up with your pliers, I found that it'll get little marks from where you've pressed. That's why I recommend a cloth. That's actually just a little polishing cloth, but it can be any piece of cloth. So we're just going to hold them, and we're going to move these wires outwards like that. So now we can lock our stone in. I'm going to grab my little round peach moonstone. Just trying to determine how to position it. So popping it into the frame. Here on the back, we're just going to work those back wires onto the stone, bending them with my pliers. And as you bend it, you just want to make sure that they don't become visible here at the top. Like if you bend it too much, this wire can go into this like little window, and then you'll see it. And then here on the front, you just grab the frontmost wires and kind of push them onto the front of the stone, and with your pliers you kind of get in there, go all the way down to where that little wrap is on the bottom, and then just turn your pliers, and it makes this sharp little bend, bends the wire onto the stone. So just wedge the pliers in there, going all the way down, and sharp turn just like that, and then press that. If that sometimes it lifts up a little bit from the stone, you just press down on it. So now our stone is all set, it's all locked in, so we just have to finish off our bail. So for the bail, I'm going to just bend it forwards a little bit. You can bend it around like bail making pliers, or like a little pencil or something, or even just your round nose pliers to make the little bail shape, or you can just do it by hand like I'm doing it here. So as I'm bending it, I'm putting the ends through here, so they're going through this little gap from the back to the front. I'm going to use my pliers to help guide the bail. So just going to grab my little cloth again, because I don't want to scratch the front of the pendant, but I do want to press down on the bail like that. And I do want to separate these little wires a little bit. So here in the front, these are the bail wires. So as you separate them, place them underneath this other wire. So you have the wires from the top, And you want your bail wires to just kind of go right under them like that. And we're going to do only one side. So I'm just going to do the left side here. I'm going to grab them both. I'm going to bring them to the back. I'm going to bend them like that. And then I'm going to trim them off. We're not going to trim the other wires though on the other side, so don't repeat this step on the other side. It's going to be different. So just tucking the little wire ends away by pressing them inside of the bail. So they're just in there. Now, if you like the look of this and you do want both sides to be like this, you could repeat this step. But the design that I'm making here involves doing something different with these wires. So I'm just going to straighten this out a little bit. It's got a big bend in it. And I am going to start to kind of do the same thing where I bend them towards the back, making sure it's looking symmetrical. So this could be a look if you like. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring them all the way across the back, and then they're going to end up underneath these two. And then I'm going to bend them, just keep wrapping it around, and then bend them towards the front like this. And then here on the front, I'm going to take the top wire. So you do need these particular two wires to be kind of longish. I know the other wires, I trimmed them short, but these two need to be long so they can wrap all the way around. So I'm making just like a little swirl up here. I'm just gonna try and fix it with my pliers so it's facing straight. There we go. Here's my little loop, and if you just continue the wire and bend it to the back, this is what you get. And then here on the back, we're just going to trim that. And then we're going to take that little wire end, bend it inside, and tuck it in there. Like that. So here is zoomed in version of how it looks from the front. So I'm just going to zoom out a little bit. So here on the bottom, basically want to do the same thing. And an optional thing that you could do, it's up to you, but because this is 21 gauge wire, if you're using a bigger stone and you sized up to 20 gauge wire, then you just need to find a bead that fits. But I have these little 2mm copper beads. They're the seamed beads that are solid copper that are from Rio Grande, and they actually fit onto the 21 gauge wire. So if you wanted to kind of spruce this up a little bit, you could add a little bead. It's just hard to keep it, there we go, symmetrical with the bead perfectly on the bottom. Might take a little bit of effort there, but then we're just going to continue this wire, and look at that, it's just enough, isn't it? We're going to trim off just the littlest bit, and then we're just going to take that little wire end and tuck it in, press it down. So here on the back, all our wire ends are tucked away. We've got this wire kind of swooping across. And here on the front, we've got our two little loops there. You can kind of mess around and try to center it better if it's not as symmetrical as you'd like. And here's another pendant that I made in this design, and this one is a teardrop with the point down, so you can kind of see how it looks different. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time. Bye.